Return of the Jax. Once again, Return of the Jax, top of the world. You knew that she'd be back. And she is.
Cripe, she is.
Welcome to the WrestleTalk Podcast. Please do press the subscribe button and give us a little thumbs up as well while you're here, because I am Luke Owen, DAD. This is the Professor, the Truth, your Jam That Champion, Dan Layton. And this is the WrestleTalk Podcast review of Monday Night Raw. If you're watching on video demand, why don't you leave a comment down below with what you thought of this episode of Raw and Nia Jax's return.
I was trying to come up with a joke. You've done the joke already, but I was trying to come up with a line. Raquel's back. Nia Jax is back.
Very good.
Do you know?
Yeah.
I don't. But that was much better.
I mean, well, Rhea and Raquel are currently in the Battle of the Backs. And who won it in the end? Nia Jax, who came back.
Yeah, and may or may not have broken one of their backs. It's not true.
Yeah,
we're liable here.
As far as we know.
As far as we know,
not yet.
Go and turn the aircon on. I've just realised how hot I am. Is that going to ruin everything?
Yeah, I mean, you're always hot, Dan.
Thanks, babe.
And if you're watching this live, please do get in your alpha chats to WrestleTalk.com/support, because we'll read out every single one of them above the $5 amount. And we are going to be kicking things off today with this Nia Jax news.
Yes.
So, Fightful Select reported after she'd made a return, she's actually been signed for a little while.
Yeah, this is not a surprise to me, actually, in a weird way.
See, I'd heard, reports and stuff that she might be on her way back, but I didn't expect her at all on this show, even with the little bit of foreshadowing that Raquel had done earlier in the night. You sort of look back on that now and you'd be like, they were planting the seeds for you all along to let you know she's going to return at the end of this show.
Planting the seeds, liberally sprinkling seeds everywhere. At some point, just throwing seeds in your face. Because I found out before seeing it in the show when I woke up, so I was aware of it, and so every single time they mentioned nobody can match Rhea Ripley for power, I was like, I see what you're doing.
I see where this is going.
Yeah,
and what was the other point I was going to make there? So Fightful Select's report. They also said that those in WWE are surprised it's taken this long for her to be back on TV. They thought she'd be back a little while ago. When I was making this episode, when I was doing the metadata and everything in the back end of YouTube for this podcast, I'd forgotten she was in this year's Rumble.
Well, this was what I was going to say. Yeah, she was in the Rumble.
Because I typed in WWE, Nia Jax WWE return, or sort of looking for keywords that people are searching for, and everyone was talking about Royal Rumble. I was like, what?
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh yeah, she was in the Rumble this year.
Yeah.
I'd completely forgotten.
She made her entrance at number 30 before the 30 bell went off. Do you remember this? Obviously, it was
That's
supposed to be
right!
supposed to be a giant surprise, and then just her music hit out of nowhere, and then they started the 10 count, and they were I'll just take that off screen, whatever. They just went early with it, which meant that you didn't get that big surprise pop. You just got what? That was the kind of reaction we all had. So she was number 30, and then I don't know if it's that I'd read that she was rumored for a return, rumored that she'd been signed, or read that
on the dockets for a little while. Signed, I didn't know, but I think she could be on her way back. I think it's in talk of town for at least a couple of months or so.
I am not surprised by this in any way, shape, or form. As you say, didn't expect it in the moment on the show, but this makes sense.
The hiring freeze that has sort of been stifled WWE from signing people like Jay White and Kota Ibushi has now been lifted, particularly because the Endeavor deal is now done.
As of now,
just announced it. Yeah, TKO is now a company. UFC, Endeavor, WWE merged all together under this new umbrella of TKO. So and it was that merger that was sort of stopping this hiring freeze. They put the hiring freeze in place.
Yeah,
but now that that's done, we'll probably be seeing more people possibly returning. Some of these people that Triple H wanted to bring back in the first half of this year. There was a report from Fightful Select yesterday. Deonna Purrazzo.
She's free from Impact soon.
Yeah, her contract is up with Impact very soon. She's a Triple H fave.
Well, do you remember there was that conversation about AOP have apparently been
signed for ages.
We had Eric Young was signed and not used on TV. Now that was an interesting case because he was brought in for
Bray Wyatt.
And obviously Bray Wyatt's health issues at the time was the reason that didn't go down. Then obviously he left so he was before Vince came back. That was what that was.
In fact, Eric Young left because Vince came back.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see more people become available. There are free agencies. There's one big one circling the waters at the moment. If you want to make a bit of money, speaking about UFC and WWE being together now.
Lesnar.
Exactly. So yeah, I wouldn't.
Velasquez.
Oh my God. Conor McGregor never had a shot. He always hinted he wanted a bit with Drew, didn't he?
God, they were doing that for years. Conor McGregor's going to have a SummerSlam match or some nonsense. But so the main event of this show was Raquel Rodriguez versus Rhea Ripley for the Women's World Championship. The crowd were mild during this match, considering they'd done I think a really good job throughout this.
Oh, they were amazing
of making this feel like a big time matchup. Despite the fact we saw it 2 weeks ago.
Oh, but I see what you mean. You mean they WWE?
They WWE, I thought, were doing a really good job of trying to make this feel like a big time matchup. Really putting over this idea Dom's not going to be at ringside. Mm-hmm. The only reason that Rhea retained the title is because of Dominic Mysterio. No one can match the power of Rhea Ripley apart from Raquel Rodriguez. Mm-hmm. But they were doing a really good job of hyping that up, but it didn't translate into the match itself, but the crowd reaction to the match. Because the crowd, you heard how hot they were during the trios match that came before this.
Well, from the first moment of the show, the crowd I thought were absolutely on fire.
But this main event, they were just And
I think it was because we saw it a couple of weeks ago.
I think it was, and we saw this match a couple of weeks ago, and it wasn't very good then. And so I think people kind of went into this being this is, and not for nothing, but I don't think anyone expected Raquel to win either. No. So I don't think that particularly helped matters. We'll come on to that in a little bit when we talk about Chad and Gunther. But I think it was a combination of two things. We saw the match 2 weeks ago, and people didn't like it that much. Mm-hmm. And no one really bought into Raquel ever winning this belt.
Yeah.
But they did come alive a little bit towards the end when they started to brawl outside. And then, I don't know, what did you make of the crowd reaction to Nia's return? Because I don't think it was an overwhelming holy S reaction from the crowd.
I think it was a muted reaction. And I think that had a large part to do with just the way it happened, which was that she came out of the crowd. I knew who it was because I already knew. So she came out of the crowd, did a little bash, and then was down by ringside facing away from the camera a little bit. And the camera kept cutting away and cutting back. And I think if you're in the arena, you're like, what's happened? Who's that? I can't see. Oh, is that Nia Jax? That's Nia Jax. We're talking about that. So you get that kind of conversational reaction as opposed to the I'm not like most girls. Whoa! Kind of reaction.
Apparently, she's got a new theme.
She has got a new theme. So someone tweeted, if this show doesn't start with Dan Layton singing I'm not like most girls, then what are we doing here? And I was like, haha, that's funny. The next tweet I saw was she's got a new theme. She's still not like most girls, to be clear. Within the song, she's not like most girls. But it's a remixed new version of the theme.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So she is very much inserting herself into the title picture here, and actually kind of keeps Raquel within the title picture as well, which I think is a smart move.
Yeah.
Despite the fact the matches aren't particularly great, I think you can heat Raquel up to the point where you could buy into her as a title contender. And so she attacks Raquel at ringside. That allows Rhea Ripley to pick up the win with the Riptide. And then afterwards, Nia Jax gets in the ring, headbutts Rhea Ripley as well, gives her the bonsai drop and
slaps her in the face.
Yeah, she sits at it and just goes like me and my brother, the way we used to fight when we were kids. Do you ever play this game with your siblings where we used to call it typewriter? So this is where you kneel on their chest, you sit on their chest with your knees on their shoulder blades, and you just go like this on their chest, and then you slap them on the side of the head and go ding, ding.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Luke. That doesn't sound like a game. That sounds like bullying. But no, we never did.
Yeah, my brother's 6 years older than I am.
There you go. So yeah, and he's like, no, it's a game. Trust me.
Yeah, bing. Hated it. So annoying. But yeah, so she did the typewriter on Rhea Ripley, and then she posed with the belts, and it was like, yeah, okay, we are heading our way into a triple threat title program here between the Eradicator in Rhea Ripley, the big back in Raquel Rodriguez, and the Irresistible Force in Nia Jax.
The Annihilator is what Cole called
her. Yeah, the Annihilator.
The Annihilator.
And Raquel's back.
So
let me ask you, what are your feelings? What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Your reactions? Your excitement levels, perhaps?
So my reactions are far less heated generally. Sometimes I'll pop, right? Sometimes I'll be excited. Sometimes I'll be really hot about something. Most of the time, my reaction is more in the middle, and sometimes it gets me a bit stick because I like to see it play out before I make a decision. This one is one where I'm just like, okay, like, sure. I was reminded a lot of the reasons that a lot of people are so, why are we doing this about Nia Jax? I actually thought when Nia debuted in NXT, I thought it was a really interesting person, like height-wise, body type-wise.
Because, like, literally, she was not like most girls. Like, NXT had a sort of style of lady wrestler, and Nia was not that. She really did stand out from everyone else.
And if you compare her to other sort of, like, bigger women in wrestling, like Awesome Kong or like Aja Kong, like Piper Niven to a degree, although Piper Niven's a bad example because she's also there's an element of but what I'm trying to say is she's got glamour. They're not treating her like a monster who's like got face paint and she's like, I'm gonna beat you and I'm gonna whatever. She was kind of glamorous. Like that was the song has glamour.
She's a model.
Exactly, she's a model. So it was kind of
a very successful model as well.
And it was a very forward bit of body type representation, I suppose. So I was kind of, and then she had some good matches with Bailey. Was it? She ever Bailey?
So yeah,
when she debuted.
Yeah, when she debuted. So I remember I was at NXT.
Was it at London?
At Takeover London.
Yeah.
It was Nia Jax versus Bailey, and
because Asuka was against Emma.
Yeah, and I was a Bailey super fan.
Yeah,
and I was saying to my friend, I don't want Bailey to lose.
Yeah,
but I genuinely worried that Bailey was going to lose that belt because I was like, that's a very WWE thing to do, is just to put it onto the monster heel. Glamorous though she may be,
she's still the monster heel.
And she was pushed to the monster heel, the bear hug and everything. And I genuinely was like, oh man, I'm going to see my girl lose the NXT Women's Championship. I was genuinely concerned about that. And so it really made me elated when Bailey picked up the win in that, when she choked her out. And it's awesome. And you can get that out of Nia Jax. Problem there, I think, is that, you know, I'm using an example there from 2015.
Well, there you go.
But then there were 6 years that preceded that, or, you know, that came after that, where it was just like matches weren't very good, or like stories weren't very good, promos very good. My Whole.
I love My Whole.
And, you know, it's like tag runs. And then, of course, there's hurting a lot of people.
Yeah, this is where I was going to go next. I was going to start with NXT and talk about how it was kind of an interesting beginning, and then as we went, I actually think there were a couple of standouts for me. The Alexa Bliss storyline, where she kind of overcame the bullying or whatever, and then, you know, won the belt, is fine. Like, I don't remember it being outstanding storytelling.
She turned her heel very shortly thereafter.
That was the problem. Then you have, for me, for my money, one of my favorite wrestling matches and moments in 2020 was the tag team match at Payback between Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler, and the Boss and Hood connection, the Golden Role Models, because there was some really interesting storytelling going on. Shayna and Nia were both this dominant person who kind of didn't trust each other, and then there was a moment in the middle of the match where they were like, "Oh, hang on, we can win this here," and I just really loved it was Shayna who had that final moment of submitting both Bailey and Sasha. I thought it was a really well worked little match. So on their day, you can get some really good stuff out of Nia Jax. But then you are right. Inconsistent booking is something that hampers every wrestler. And I'm loath to be like, you're an unsafe worker. You're an unsafe worker because spoilers, I'm not a worker. So like I can judge certain things and I can analyze and critique certain things, but I can't speak to that. There were, though, injuries.
There's a track record.
Yeah.
We've always had this position on the WrestleTalk Podcast, which is just like, look, we don't know.
Yeah.
We can't say for certain because we're not in the ring with her to say whether she's an unsafe worker or not. But there is a track record. There is a pattern. You could make a top 10 list on partsFUNknown of women that Nia Jax has injured in a 5-year span. And
look, in the name of comparison, Ridge Holland has injured, in that, if you want to use it in those terms, Big E, and recently you won at Kit Harington out of Pretty Deadly. What's he actually called? Elias Prince? Which one?
So there's Elton Prince.
And Kit Daly. Kit Harington's Game of Thrones.
Yeah, well, now you've said that, that's what I can think of now. Kit Wilson?
Kit Wilson, something like that. He's gone and injured Pretty Deadly black hair. So wrestling, it ain't ballet.
It ain't ballet.
Things happen. There's an element of miscommunication. There's a height and weight difference between the women. But that said, you are right. There's a list and a track record, so you've got to take that seriously. I was reminded of that moment she had with Charlotte. Do you remember this? Where they
had a real fight.
Each other in the ring.
They just had a real fight in the ring.
And she just went, "Oh, you're done."
Yeah.
And it was like, goodness gracious.
Not a good year for Charlotte, that, because that's the same year then as the title switch incident as well.
Right. So all of that is there. Like, that's got to all be part of the Nia Jax consideration. So where that brings me to where I sit on her coming back now, I don't know.
Do you know what? When we started this, this live stream, there's always the pre-chat that people are having with each other, and a lot of people was like, "Oh man, I can't wait to see Wrestle get heated about this." I'm kind of not though.
I know there are some people who are.
Absolutely. I came into the office. Pete and Tempest were heated about this because they are not Nia Jax fans and were not on board with her coming back. And I get that. I really, really do. And like the people who were leaving comments on the WrestleTalk news episode, being, with all the things that are often said about Nia Jax, I totally get that as well. From a personal standpoint, though, I feel kind of nothing about this.
I think that's kind of damning.
Yeah, and it's I don't feel really either way. Like, I hope she doesn't hurt anyone. Yeah. Like, I hope that doesn't happen again, because like that's terrible for it to happen to anyone. I wish that on every single week of a wrestling show, regardless of who's signed and who isn't.
Agreed.
Am I excited for a triple threat program of Nia Jax, Rhea Ripley, and Raquel? Not particularly, but I wasn't really into the Rhea Raquel program either.
No.
So like adding Nia Jax has neither added to or diminished my interest that was in that feud. Then I've got to decide, well, what do I see past this triple threat title feud? Because I don't think Nia's going to win the belt. And I'm like, I don't know. She'll probably just get put into a tag with someone, and like probably her and Tamina will just be a tag team again, and we'll just do this, again. I don't see a lot of upside to having Nia on your roster, considering that Raw's women's roster is already quite stacked that doesn't get used.
Yes,
Candice LeRae, Indy Hartwell, just two names off some head. Emma is on there. Tegan Nox is on the Raw roster. Like, there's a bunch of women that I would be putting into title positions over Nia Jax. But they'll get. I would like to think.
Well, so that sorry to interrupt you, but that takes us into the whole question of booking the women's division in the first place. And if you don't put them on TV, they can't get over.
Absolutely.
So like it's that. Whereas Nia Jax is already over in both a negative and positive way, right? Like she's people know who she is, but that does bring with it some like, oh god, like we saw her upstairs. I interestingly don't see it as a triple threat, and I see it just as like, I've just got Raquel out of the way. I can see Raquel and Nia having a match, and Raquel being,
I can
shifted off.
Well, I can see them doing a number one contendership match for Fastlane, and within that they do a double count out or a double DQ or something, and that's what leads it to being a triple threat.
And it's that's true. I think for me the idea of like, okay, Rhea versus Nia, I would hope that in the time off and in the return, there's been some sort of like work development, maybe. Like, I don't know. We won't know until we see her do the work. But like, I'm sort of like, oh, okay, I'll watch that. Like, I'm intrigued by the visual of that, if nothing else. Also, I'm a big proponent of people coming in for short-term deals. Like, I've
absolutely.
always talked about, I bring Nick Aldis for a short program with Cody. If he's backstage, if he's good to go, chuck him in the ring for a minute, and he doesn't have to be long-term. That's not really how WWE works. They like to have the control of the monopoly. So yeah, I don't know. The question of what she does after a feud with Rhea without winning the belt is kind of one where I'm like, well, okay, go off and do modeling now again. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You sign a legend in my GM and they come in for a bit and then they go away.
That's how I say, like a 5-week deal thing.
I think it's a really good business strategy. It's a really good storytelling strategy.
It's what you used to do in the old territory.
There you go.
You come in, you do a run with the territory, and then you go off and do another different territory instead.
Yeah, I have CM Punk coming back for 3 months, and that's it. A Rumble to WrestleMania. In my head, if I'm doing it, I'm like, well, yeah, let's work together for this short period of time.
Yeah.
And then you go off.
It was like, when Goldberg came in 2004, that was the idea, or 2003 rather, was we've signed you for a year. We've got you from night after Mania till Mania. What we're going to do in that year?
Yeah.
And the answer to that was we're going to do nothing with you and make you look lame. But you can do a short-term run with Nia. Who knows? I've got kind of no feelings currently. But yeah, I think that's more of an indictment on Rhea and Raquel than it is on Nia Jax return.
Yeah, this match was dull.
Yeah, a lot rest hold heavy.
There was a really cool moment in it where Rhea had Raquel in like a waistlock in the ropes, and the ref is like counting it down, and it had begun as Raquel's offensive move, and the ref is like, you got to break this, and she's like, I'm trying, she's got me, I can't. So there was a creative moment in there. There was some creative bits here and there, but yeah, I think the match being a little bit there, and then this return being a little bit like, who's that? What's that going? Didn't make it feel explosive. It felt in the middle of the show. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, let's get into your alpha chat on this topic. If I'm going to throw to you on this one, only because I'm just going to do a slight adjustment on the audio. Just seeing, we get a lot of comments, people like, your mics are too low. So I'd boosted them. And then people are still telling me that they're too low. But then other people say that they're fine. But other people, the people who say that they're low are very ironically loud in this. So I was like, well, I'll adjust it slightly more, and now I'm getting people telling me they're peaking. So
okay, great.
I'm just going to just adjust it down ever so slightly. So if you can read the first one from Mod Mother.
Mod Mother has told us that they told us earlier in the show, so this is in reference to them planting seeds and all of that. Raquel said in her promo, I'm not like most people. Mod Mother says, I instantly turned to my husband and said, Nia's going to show up later. And then she did. Sigh. I hate knowing everything.
Oh, Jenna.
It's a curse.
Yeah. When I saw a few people point this out on the old Twitter machine as well, when I was looking for, what people's reaction to this was. And there were people, live tweeting their thoughts on Raw with quoting that line being like, I don't think Nia Jax is going to show up later, do you? I'd heard that line and I didn't really think much of it, apart from I thought like, oh, that sounds a lot like Nia's old thing.
Right.
And then when Nia showed up later, I was like, oh, that's why she said the line earlier. It was foreshadowing.
I mean, I like a little early reference. I like foreshadowing. It works for me.
Ooh, Kingslayer here. So it's a little off topic, but hear me out. Now that Nia Jax is back, I had an idea pop in my head, a female bloodline with Nia, Tamina, and Simone Johnson, the Rock's daughter, maybe in the future returning Naomi. Just an idea.
So I was going to do a little joke, and then I forgot because we were talking about it in a serious way about Nia is so tangentially related to the bloodline at this point, like because she's like the cousin of the Rock.
She's the cousin of the Rock,
who is only in the bloodline because of the not in terms of actual relation, but because of the traditions and culture of Samoa, they were blood brothers, and that's how the Rock's in part of the family. So I was like, well, I mean, they signed Trinity to Impact, so that if they're going to bring in a female member of the bloodline, it's got to be Nia.
And to the point of just like, surely they can just all be part of the same bloodline faction.
Yeah.
You don't have to do like bloodline lasses.
I don't think they should. No.
Jason here says, I know people will have their bad faith takes about her being an unsafe worker. I'm not excited about this because I feel there's never been much to her character other than she is big. None of her matches stand out to me, and she's not that great on the mic. Jam that jam. Love you guys.
I actually think she's alright on the mic, personally.
She has presence.
Yes, that's what I mean. And she seems to have lent into this polarizing figure that she is. And I'm not speaking to like any politics or anything like that, because I don't really read that much or pay much attention to that. I just mean in terms of purely in-ring stuff. So she's got charisma.
The Derpiest of Derp says, this was an okay episode. I've got big hopes for Nia. Still mind-boggling how big the reactions to Dominic are.
Yeah.
Well, the Derpiest of Derps, there are quite a few claims that a lot of it's now piped in.
Well, I would like to talk about that because I did some research.
Yeah.
This isn't me getting that research. This is me checking something else. But there was a whole stretch of people being like, and I believed as well that they're piping booze in. I think they are genuinely that loud. And you see people's tweets from in the venue. When I was at Money in the Bank, obviously that's, we don't get it that often, and we're around the crowd anyway.
It's an outlier case.
Yeah, but like it seems that people are really, really quite loud.
I think it goes from city to city. I think it really does depend. But I think there are some episodes where there have been claims. I don't know this for certain. Like, I think there are oftentimes you can tell Boo.Wav has been played, but oftentimes I never really noticed it in Dom. On this episode, I did thought it was like, I think his mic is just lower.
So here we go.
I think it's less that the crowd are so loud that you can't hear him. It's that his, what we've just been talking about there, his mic is much lower than everyone else's. So it sounds like the boos are louder than they are.
Yeah. It's this thing of like, it is in the audio mix. It is in I think there probably are like embellishing.
I think there are some weeks where you don't need it.
I do too. And I think what's interesting though is I think that they are just I think someone is sat there with the fader at the crowd mic in the production truck, just going.
Yeah, because
it's jamming it, and it makes it feel fake.
And I think the reason why people think it's boo.wav is because the second that Damian Priest starts talking, it stops. But that also could just be the crowd like, no, we're only doing it for him.
And it is that because you see, especially this crowd, because they were quite well lit and they were quite, someone in the front row was absolutely cackling to herself about booing Dominic and then stopping. It's fun. I think perhaps it started as embellished and supported by boo.wav, but that then makes you be like, oh, we get to boo Dominic and we're all going to be like, join in.
Absolutely.
And so it doesn't surprise me that it stops when Damien starts talking.
Yeah, because the second he's talking, it's like, well, that's not the fun person to boo.
Yeah,
And you hand it back to Dom and you start to boo again.
Yeah, it's a game.
Thank you to Punk Rock and Soda for your alpha chat in. Because it's a bit of a touchy subject and a controversial topic, we're not going to read it out on air, but I do appreciate the it's being sent in. If you do want anything refund-wise, please do email support@WrestleTalk.com on that one. The Mayor of Painesville, Dan, says, hello, Luke and other Dan. Hope you're doing well. On the topic of Nia Jax, I'm trying to put this as polite as possible. She's horrible in every aspect. She brings nothing to the table. There are good enough people that they could have used instead. Well, yeah,
if that's you being polite, I'd hate to cross you.
Yeah, I mean, and there's sometimes none politer than the Mayor of Painesville. So yeah, like I totally get what you mean. Like we named 4 names off just off the top of my head that I think you could have a stronger women's division with, and that's not including. I haven't even mentioned Becky. Shayna is right there. Shayna's right there. Chelsea Green, Piper Niven is right there. Zoe Stark, I think, has been doing really, really great work, and Tiffany Stratton. Like if you're using this as a launching pad for Tiffany Stratton, because you're going to bring her up to the main roster, which apparently is
talk about that,
which apparently is one of the plans, is that they're going to fast track Tiffany to the main roster. There's another name. I could do 10 women on this roster that I would be putting in title programs before I've even thought about bringing Nia Jax back into the fold. Well, let's get into this show, because I'm sure some of that will be brought up in this episode. But this was also reportedly a Vince-heavy episode in terms of creative changes and change to the format, changes to the order of things. And yeah, like there's been a report, when he came back for the Endeavor deal and everything, he was doing a lot of remote changes. Like Sean over at Fightful Select stopped putting up the Raw rundowns because Vince was just changing them anyway. So he didn't feel like it was in good faith to do that. But then, because he had his surgery, he literally went away and was not making changes. So Sean felt comfortable to start posting the Raw rundowns again. And this was the first week where he was posting the Raw rundown, and it was like, very sorry, there have been a lot of changes to this. And he was just updating it as it went. And it really was just different orders of things. So Cody was supposed to open this show.
Right.
It was supposed to open with the Cody and Dominic thing, but that was moved to later. There was a match with Viking Raiders versus Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin. That was moved to main event. There was a Natalya match that was supposed to set up, because obviously she had a backstage segment,
which we didn't hear any of.
Yeah, so that was supposed to set up a match that was going to happen. That got moved, and I think that was then moved to main event, then just completely removed entirely.
Right. So there was a lot of kerfuffle.
A lot of kerfuffle, and the reports are that it's just like, well, yeah, he's back again.
So there's interesting people being like, oh, he's on the way out because of this new TKO thing. He's gonna and I'm like, I don't think any of us know about business. A lot of assertions are being made about now this TKO deal has been put in place. This is how WWE is going to be run, and it's a lot of people who, I'm sorry, don't seem to know business. I don't know business either, but it just strikes to me as wishful fulfillment rather than wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking, yeah. I think he is. There have been allegations against Vince for like 40 years, and he sort of survived them until the Wall Street Journal stuff. But he knows, like, there could be more Wall Street Journal stuff, and that will change.
Or I even mean, like,
of things.
Endeavor doing a restructure, and he's going to be too busy elsewhere, and it's like, no, he's going to find a way.
The point of the Endeavor structure is that he is in control of WWE.
Yeah. He's executive chairman of the company, and he's in the same way that Dana White is massively involved.
Well, yeah. So Dana's running UFC.
Yeah.
Vince is running WWE. Like, so nothing huge has changed there, really. Triple H is still the head of creative and is still the head of talent relations, and they're very, very high on that. Sean Rossat was talking on Fightful Select. The reason why Triple H still has his job is because he did so well with the company when Vince wasn't there. Like, you can't look at the numbers, the gate numbers, the merchandise numbers, the TV ratings when Triple H was fully in charge, of creative and say, he did a bad job, we need to bring Vince in to run that side of things. So Triple H still gets to keep his job, but Vince is still always going to be the final say, unless he is ousted for whatever reason. But for the time being, yeah, Vince is here and Vince is in charge and Vince will have final say. So we may have a few chaotic weeks of Raw, a few chaotic months of Raw where there are plans in place. Things are. I mean, it stands to reason that nothing was announced for this show.
Yeah, there were 3 segments.
3 segments, 2 of which were talking segments,
but all of which happened just in various. I love the idea
did one of them happen?
I love the idea that Hunter is tripping triple events at various places, just go for another surgery because then I can have the show back for a bit.
Yeah. But the show instead opened with Jey Uso, and he said that it's good to be on Raw, but someone who doesn't agree with that is Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens came out to say that there's a lot of guys in the back there that do not want you here. Like, really, it's only Sammy and Cody that want you here, and you've got a lot to do to show me that I can trust you. And immediately after that, the Judgment Day come out. And I really liked Finn Balor just being like, "Oi, come here to me. Let's get I'm not going to do it." Like, I don't know what he's talking about. I think it's great that you're here. And I absolutely trust you. I think it's because they're trying to butter him up to join the Judgment Days. I thought Finn was really, really fun in this. And then Damian Priest says, "Look, we were supposed to have a match between Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn tonight." And I was like, why?
Yeah.
Why were you supposed to?
Says who?
I guess it's Raw in 2023.
Yeah.
So the Judgment Day had to have a match with Sami and Kevin, I guess.
Yeah, at least it wasn't an event.
But Sami was not there. So Jey stepped up to be, I'll be the tag partner instead. Really like that.
I love this segment.
I thought this was a really fun segment, and it led to what was a pretty good match, actually, of Kevin and Jey versus the Judgment Day, where, unfortunately, Jey accidentally super kicked Kevin, and the Judgment Day picked up the win from a coup de grace. But it's a great finish, because you could always be like, well, as a babyface, you know that's an accident. But because of everything that Jey has done, and his track record with the Bloodline, if you're Kevin Owens, you're like, but was it an accident, or is it just Jey being Jey?
Yeah, and to your point on that, because you spoke about it a couple of weeks ago, because there was the Drew Kofi stuff where Drew accidentally injured Woods, and Kofi was like, "No, it's fine, you didn't mean to do it." You were like, because he's a smart person.
A smart person.
So in this case, it's Kevin Owens being like a bit hot about it, but we have established Kevin Owens' character is someone who is a bit hot and does jump to that kind of thing. And with the previous that they have, it's just pushing him over the edge and being like, well, hang on, sod ya. I loved this whole segment. I thought the pop for Jey when he came out was real and big and good for him. The like Uso chant, it really seemed to work for him and fire up the crowd in a big way. Kevin almost said the same thing as Dom did. You remember Dom did that brilliant segment last week where it was very emotional, very tender, and sort of like, I understand, I've been in your shoes. Kevin was almost saying the same thing as like, I've been in your position too. I've done stuff that I'm not proud of, and you know, I had to earn the respect of people back. But he was doing it in a very aggressive way. He was doing it in a very like, you know, step up. Like, I'm not going to take your BS. It was almost like a red pill, blue pill situation from them, which I thought was quite fascinating. And it built really nicely to the point that when Jey super kicked Dom, it made me sit forward a little bit and go, okay, where are we going with this? But even within that was what Damian had said about how even Dom said no a whole bunch before seeing the light and joining the Judgment Day, because it was that thing of like, he knew what he knew, which was that he needed to get out of his father's shadow, and they were just going to encourage him to do it. Jey is allowed to say no to the Judgment Day for a while because he knows deep down they are the ones that are on his side.
Yeah, they are the ones.
Hello. Oh, that's great. So yeah, there was also a Kevin Owens did a top brainbuster that going against WWE's usual style, they kept in the wide shot, which looked great.
Yeah, rather than some of the crash zoom.
It was so good.
There was a great line from Wade Barrett on commentary after this match when like Kevin Owens was just looking at Jey.
Yes.
And Jey, you know, he sort of was pleading, but it wasn't like hard pleading of like, sorry, that was an accident. It was Jey just looking at him being like, look, dude, I know how that looked. But it's not what it meant. But Jey knew that there was nothing he could say in that moment. And Kevin didn't need to say anything either. He just looked at him being like, knew it. And he hobbled off. And Wade Barrett said, trust takes years to earn, but can be lost in seconds.
Whoa.
And Jey's not even earned Owens' trust yet, and he's already lost what he might have got in that one moment when they were working together.
Yeah.
Very, very good. And honestly, Jey on Raw, honestly, it just puts such a spotlight on how cold Jimmy feels on SmackDown.
Oh, big time.
Because
time.
Jimmy just going, I'm just back in the bloodline now.
He had a match with AJ Styles that just was dry.
Yeah. And it's just like ice cold.
Yeah.
And it's hurting Solo as well. And like this angle is without Roman there is just Greg, it's crumbling to pieces.
Main event Jey Uso, like,
and like Jey moves out, and it's like Christmas Day. This was the best thing that could have happened to you.
Yeah,
because if you'd have stayed on SmackDown, bloody hell, what would be doing to spin these plates?
Because spoilers, I loved every segment on the show with Jey in it.
Yeah,
I think it's a brilliant story. But we'll get to it.
I said this in the edited review. Without Jey, Imperium and Alpha Academy wasn't a whole much on this show that I was like hugely into.
Yeah,
I quite like some of the Drew stuff.
Oh, I love the Drew stuff.
I'm really enjoying that, but it's sort of the next chapters of things that we've kind of seen previously with during the New Day. But I really am I'm getting into that. But as like standout stuff, it's Jey and it's Imperium and Alpha Academy. Everything else on Raw, I think, is just a bit dry.
Right, I kind of vouch for that.
We had speaking of dry, a video recap of Rhea Ripley and Raquel's match from Payback.
I have a very quick question for everybody. Why is it that they show you the recap, but they fade to black for the 3 count?
So you don't see the finish. So then you have to go and order the pay-per-view or go and sign up for Peacock to see the finish.
So the 3 count is the only bit that's worth $9.99?
Yeah.
All right.
That's been their model for 30 years.
Well, they used to show you stills.
Yeah.
And I thought that was good. But here they'll show you right up to the finisher, and then they'll black to black the 3
and
count.
Just hear the 1, 2, 3, and then that's it.
Stupid.
Raquel was then hanging out with Natalia, who was probably telling you about some records that she's broken. And then we got a video recap of Gunther versus Gable from last week, which led into The Miz beating Akira Tozawa in a squash match.
So I wrote for that match no notes and not in the good way. But one thing I do have to talk about, and I'm being very cautious with as I do this, because Michael Cole put on his serious voice to talk about how it was the 20-something anniversary of 9/11, I think the 22nd anniversary of 9/11, which is obviously a very, devastating worldwide tragedy. It was very focused in America.
I remember exactly where I was.
And the world changed between the two, and it's harrowing to this day. So as he's talking about how we'll never forget that, the Miz's face is whizzing past him on the board, and I'm like, does this production team think ever? It's like, well, we're really, thinking of those that we lost, and it's changed our country, and we'll never forget. I came to pay. It doesn't work, guys. Just think a little bit.
Yeah. This was it was a squash match. It was serious Miz this week. I never take him as a serious threat, but he did his thing, and he's facing LA Knight on SmackDown.
And hey, Luke, I wonder who's going to be traded over to SmackDown because the brand split matters. Really matters, Luke.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm not getting involved.
I saw it was on the review. You sort of just said you're just not going to go there anymore.
I'm just not doing it. I genuinely got a message from from Ollie on the Wednesday being like, "Hey, the Tuesday video did really well on the WrestleTalk News, but it's 94% thumbs up to thumbs down, which is quite a shift from our usual. Usually it's 97, 98. It's like, what was that?" And I was like, "That's because I didn't like the Miz segment." That would be my guess.
It was me making millions of accounts to just be like, no.
Because I didn't like the Miz segment, which was, enjoyed by a lot more people than it was me. So I was like, it was probably that. So I feel like I'll just stay neutral on Miz segments. He did a thing, and we'll move on. This is when Saxton and his beard interviewed.
It's really working for me. The little beard.
I think he looks pretty good.
Yeah.
But I'm not one to rag on someone's beard, so I think he looks. I think he makes it work. He interviewed Raquel, which is where she dropped her "she's not like most people" foreshadowing. Not Kathy Kelly interviewed Shayna Baszler. Chelsea walked up with both the tag belts. I was like, oh no! And she was looking for a new tag partner, and I was like, oh no, not again. I know last week it was just that she'll miss a little bit of time.
She wasn't
medically cleared. And Sean had said she'll only be off for a handful of weeks. I was like, oh, maybe it's worse.
Yeah, maybe it's worse than we thought.
And now need to get a new tag partner. But Shayna walked off and she's like, we'll have a match instead. And Piper Niven walked in the shot. I was like, oh,
she's like, she's medically cleared.
And she just took back her title. And I was like, oh, phew, she's here. Lovely.
Can I give you a little fantasy booking for the the women's tag division? It requires a little bit of retconning and a little bit of just go with it. But they've acknowledged this curse on this belt on television. They've said these belts are a little bit cursed, right?
Yeah.
They were unified with the NXT tag titles, which were held by a couple of witches. Like, those characters are witches. What if they put a hex on the belts? Put it in the show.
Right. There was a segment in NXT where Isla Dawn was invisible.
This is what I'm talking about. If they're a bit witchy, work with it. Make it so that they're like, yeah, the reason this keeps happening to you is because you took these belts off us. Also, we channeled the crystal that Mercedes Moné put in the belts when she stomped away. I'm convinced there's one in there.
I love that idea.
There you go.
Because we're going to be doing, the serious feud with Shayna and Zoe Stark.
Yeah.
Which is going to be great because Chelsea can be the awesome comedic foil in all of that.
Yeah.
While these three brutes all batter each other, and she's just being
love Piper.
Chelsea Green.
Yeah,
it's going to be awesome. But when they retain, and you then go into a feud with the witches over on SmackDown, you then transition into a comedy feud where all of a sudden Piper's the straight man.
There you go.
This. That sounds wicked.
And Piper's Scottish too.
And which means that Chelsea Green's once again the odd person out.
Yeah.
Everyone else is Scottish.
While we were having a conversation in the office, I paused the show while Chelsea was talking, and I captured this beautiful screenshot, which is you and me when I'm talking about the Miz and you're Shayna in this scenario. This is what that looks like. Zoom in for the people watching.
You could have sent that to me. I could have put it up on screen.
But I wanted to surprise you with it.
Oh, okay.
So, and I also don't know how technology works. But yeah, that's my little fantasy booking for the tag titles. I think it'll be quite fun.
This next segment was awesome.
Can I begin with a little bit of comedy?
Please do.
So obviously it's the Imperium Gunther celebration of his breaking the record of longest running Intercontinental Champion Evs. And they've obviously got the Imperium pillars in the ring. And at this point, Dave Bradshaw is behind me while I'm watching it. And he leans over and says, apparently those pillars are a bit wobbly. And I said, a bit like AEW. And my, how we laughed. 4 pillars. Do you see? Tell the people what happened on the show.
Anyway, this was so cool. They literally had like pillars in the ring, so it looked like their entrance.
Yeah,
Titantron.
Oh, he's in a suit.
He's in a suit, looking awesome.
Loafers with no socks, very European.
Yeah, and it's just like Eichner looked wicked.
Yeah,
Vinci looked wicked, and Gunther looked awesome. And then Gunther put over how awesome he is,
and he was so happy.
It was just like, well,
big smile.
But also, he was just like, yeah. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm the longest reigning Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion.
Honestly, I tell you, people adding legitimacy to belts is such a wonderful thing.
It was this awesome, awesome promo segment that he was having.
Yeah.
And out comes Chad Gable. Shush! Shush, please! And out comes Chad Gable. And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
So on an Instagram Live that I did, because I do those now, someone said, like, do you think that Chad will dethrone Gunther? And I was like, I mean, there's always a possibility, but I kind of feel like I don't know where we go next with Chad's story.
I have a bit on this for when we get to the tag match later on, but yeah.
Well, we got, I'll have some Crotar because we got that motivation here. This was like so Bret Hartian in the way that he was like, I swear on my career, I swear on my family. Like, he means this. He, like, winning this belt is the most, and not just beating Gunther, and winning this belt means the world to Chad Gable right now. And he made this feel like, compare this to what Rollins and Nakamura are doing.
Yes, big time.
It feels so low card what they're doing. This feels like the legit main event program of this show, and quite rightly so as well, because they are doing stellar work. I thought, Gable, you want to talk about someone who can do the comedy and serious? Chad nails it perfectly. And Gunther's awesome. Their teams are awesome. And it leads to this brawl between them. Gunther, by the way, who was just like, how dare you?
Step to me.
Step to me again. But it was like, also, you're a disgraceful father. Like, using your child to gain sympathy from these fans, it's a low tactic. And it was like, oh, you mean bastard. Like, that's because that's not what he was doing at all.
But the other thing is, of course she loved it. It's a dad defending his daughter's honor. And I'm there going, yeah, Gunther, you tell him. So, also, we found out the name of this child. We were talking, anyone who was watching Collision with us yesterday, we were talking about, I called her daughter Gable. Her name is Briella. Briella Gable. So, on Collision, Bryan Danielson said he was retiring because he promised his daughter Birdie that he would retire when she was 7, and everyone booed her. And Chad Gable, meanwhile, is going to win the Intercontinental Championship because his daughter spurred him on. So we've got Briella Gable versus Birdie Danielson, heel versus face at WrestleMania. Call it now. Let's do all in London, maybe. Who knows? Forbidden Door.
And so anyway, it led to a brawl. Otis runs down to back up Master Gable. And then, like, from out of nowhere, Tommaso Ciampa runs down to even the odds, kind of chase them off with a chair. And this is going to, they then set up in a backstage segment a 6-man tag. Let's talk about this bit first.
Okay.
And then we'll raise the DIY question mark segment.
You keep pushing. Like Fetch, you're trying to make it happen.
We'll come back to that. But let's just focus for now on... do you love the segment as much as I did?
I loved it, yeah. I did, and I'm sort of saving some of what I thought during the segment for the match because the match was especially the finish was so excellent
good.
That I want to put over Gunther particularly later and Gable as well. Yeah. So I'll save that for then. But yeah, the segment I thought was great. Ciampa coming out was a bit like, oh, okay. Here's our next person then, I guess.
Yeah.
And it kind of answered a question I had.
There's a few people in chat have just gone,
awful!
Dan, you're terrible.
Children of school, I don't know what to tell you. This morning, I was trying to get some sleep, and there was a child outside in pure glee, screaming their head off, running up and down, making jokes. I was like, I'm going to rip that child's face off. If I leave this building and they're still there, I swear to God. Anyway.
Recap of Drew's issues with the New Day that we've had over the last few weeks. And then we had a segment from earlier in the day where Woods had a bit of a one-to-one with Drew, being like, dude, what's your problem? Because Kofi Kingston has been playing this whole, like, no, we're all right, we're cool, and everything like that. And then they had their incident, last week where Drew kind of sort of blew him off a little bit. Oh, it was an accident, was it? And so Woods came into it and was like, all right, what's your problem?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I know what your problem is. It's your problem that you won your WWE Championship in an empty arena in front of no fans, whereas Kofi Kingston won his in front of 82,000 fans.
1 year after the other.
Yeah. And that led to a match between the two of them.
I thought that was a dick move from Woods, by the way.
Yeah.
That was bullying.
I made this joke in the edited review as well. I was like, wonder why this mentioned 82,000 fans, huh?
No, I didn't even think of that. That's so petty. I love it.
That it was the announced attendance of Mania 35 when you would count in all of the comps and everything like that. Is that all in the report is, and actually a lot of this is based on fact, is that the number of the building was around about 90,000, 90 plus thousand, but the number they announced was 81,035 because that was a factual based number that they can release.
They can back it up.
They can back that up of this is how many tickets were sold. The actual ticketed number for Mania was about 68,000, but they announced 82. But yeah, I just thought it was so funny that 2 weeks later they were just like in front of 82,000 people.
It's wonderful, especially because they have ones that are pretty close to that actual number, like the 101,000. Like if you take off your extras, it's just funny.
Yeah, I think that's. I think it was like 80,000 because all in.
That's what I mean. It's close.
Yeah, all in like had more tickets sold than Mania. That Mania 32. Yeah, in Dallas. But anyway, this led to Drew versus Xavier. And I was a bit concerned going into this match that my boy Woods wasn't going to get a lot in this because Drew's main event Drew. He's a former WWE champion Drew McIntyre. And a lot of this story has kind of been built around Drew is better than most of the people in this tag division. But man, Drew made Woods look awesome. And like Woods doesn't need much help because Woods is superb. Like he's always the unsung hero of the New Day in terms of the gold that has been put around his waist singles wise. But hot dog, he was great in this match. Drew was great in this match. He won with a Claymore from out of nowhere. This was an awesome, awesome singles match. and it's just a little bit more for furthering that Drew heel turn.
Yeah.
I liked all of this, man.
I was being a bit silly at the beginning of it, making my notes, because Drew came out holding his sword and it was down lens, and it was a bit like, ow, in my eye. Also rather phallic. And then he stood on the corner and they did the big explosions all around, and it looked like they burned him alive. I thought it was quite funny. And then the match happened, and it was like Drew McIntyre being an absolute beast, like that Glasgow kiss. Woof. The deadlift suplex that he did. Thank you very much. The casual toss over the announce table.
He launched that dude.
He does my favorite move a couple of times in a row. My current favorite move is the belly overhead suplex. He just looked absolutely brutal. And, Woods did get some stuff in there as well, but this, for me, was all about Drew being an absolute machine. And I thought it was really effective. He left, his veins were popping, he looked ripped, and he was, like, angry. And I'm like, oh, good. Give me this. It's I don't like game show host Drew. I think what Wade was saying on the commentary of, like, he carried the company through the pandemic. He really did. Like, he really...
No, Bailey.
Well, no, of course. Like, forgive me. But, like, he really put in the work and did the effort, and I feel bad for him for all that happened in that regard. But he so there's something about him with the way he looks and the moves that he does that him being this brutal monster, I'm into, and I love that's the direction they're going.
We had Cody coming out for his big advertised promo, but he didn't actually get to say anything within this promo because Dom and JD McDonough came out. They talked about Jey Uso joining Judgment Day, and then Cody just beat them both up quite easily, and they scarpered.
And he took his suit off.
That was that.
It was lovely. He got really angry and ripped his shirt, and I was like, hello, there we go.
Cannot believe this company has nothing for Cody Rhodes.
Yeah.
That is staggering.
Yeah.
That this company has nothing for Cody Rhodes.
Except Luke. We need to stop talking about how they should have put the belt on him. Because at this point, we're just cringe.
Like, it is. Craig, you want to talk about things, moments on shows that put spotlights on things from elsewhere in the company. It's like, oh, you had no plans for that, boy, when you decided not to put the belt on him at Mania, huh? Like, you made the decision, oh, we'll do this at Mania 40 instead.
How do we get there?
But had nothing else planned for what you're going to do between point A and point B. Because he just feuded with Brock for 3-4 months with no story reason and has done nothing since. And Sean Rossap brought this up on the Fightful post show. He was the #1 merch seller at Payback. A show that he did not have a match on.
Nope.
And he outsold John Cena in terms of merchandise sales. And you have nothing creative for him?
It's a real problem.
Like, what are you doing?
It does make you wonder what this segment was going to be. Because if it was opening the show and this was it, probably not. So if there are fingers and meddling and stuff going on, I feel like this was going to be something else, this promo. That's pure speculation.
A little bit like, actually, Seth on the Raw After Mania.
Oh, when he came out and did nothing?
Yeah, he just came out, did his entrance, and then left.
Yeah.
Because there was something else that was planned for him to do, and then Vince made his changes, so Seth just made an entrance and then left. Because that's more or less what Cody did here. Cody made an entrance.
He came out, he said Jey Uso, Dominic interrupted him, and then he hit a few moves and took his shirt off, and I enjoyed that, but like, sorry, I'm being particularly thirsty today, but that's all it was.
Unbelievable. And it's, there are the two arguments you could possibly make in WWE's defense here. Number one, and this is not a reported plan or anything like that, it was just more speculation than anything else. He was going to go into a feud with Bray Wyatt. That is just pure like fan speculation of what could have been done with Cody Rhodes. And I think that's fan speculation fueled by the fact that Cody was doing nothing.
Right.
So if that is true and that was the case, then you got to think of something else to do because, well, unfortunately, we can't do that anymore.
This is also how, like, it's one of those things of that's a very extreme example because of the tragic circumstances. Loss. But like, people do get injured, so sometimes your plan goes out the window, and you've got to be able to... I talked about this about Tony Khan, ride the wave.
It's what we criticize Tony Khan for all the time. He is a man who cannot pivot away from ideas that he has gotten. If he gets a roadblock in his way, he struggles to work around that roadblock. But the other argument you can make is, well, he's going to go across to SmackDown, so he's just going into a short-term program with Dominic Mysterio. I'm like, cool, I saw that program 3 months ago.
There's a little part of me that's like, the ship is being steered through choppy waters, and on you got one hand, you got Triple H with his, for all the faults and any stuff that we call boring. Long term, I think there's a vision of a plan that we have evidence of it being put in place, especially that road to WrestleMania played out exactly as it was going to be reported. Then you've got Vince on the other side of the wheel, and they're both sort of doing this, and in the meantime, it's like, where are we going? If they had thought, let's get Cody on SmackDown and have a program with John Cena, and now they're not doing that, I'm a bit cross.
Cody has to be going to SmackDown. Otherwise, it's inexcusable for you not doing anything. But you could have done a different short-term program with Cody. You could have put him into a program after the Brock feud. If you knew that Wyndham wasn't going to be coming back, put him in a short-term program. Like before his passing and stuff, you could have put him into a different program. There are, you are in control of this creative to do nothing. You are lucky that Cody is as over as he is, and probably will never be under. That he can get away with the fact of not having a program for 2 months. Yeah, but it is inexcusable.
Millionaire, he should be a billionaire.
There you go. Jey Uso was walking backstage. Jey Uso just did this a lot in it. It kind of felt like he was at a house party, but he just kept walking into rooms where other people are having conversations, and he couldn't. You can't enter into those conversations because they're always midway.
They're closed off.
So what you do is you're just like, okay, I'm not being involved in any conversation. I'm just going to walk into a different room and see who else is around. But he's just finding every room is full of people having conversations that he's not a part of. Because every segment starts with Jey Uso just walking backstage. Yeah. So he got his steps in on this episode. He was walking backstage, and McIntyre walked up to him, and a match was made between the two of them for next week.
I loved the stuff Drew was doing here. It feels like he stepped up a gear. So
Shayna Baszler then took on, let's all say it together, Chelsea Green! And Baszler won with the Piper's Pit.
Spicy.
I particularly enjoyed this because Michael Cole wanted to tell his little story
about
how that he was so desperate to tell it, but there was an angle afterwards. So it was like, I'll tell you about that finisher in a second. But first, Zoe Stark is here. Shayna, more or less squashed poor Chelsea Green here. And Zoe Stark ran down to back up Shayna Baszler, and then a bit of a square, like they beat up Chelsea Green some more, and then a square off with Piper Niven. So that sets up your next women's title program, which we kind of theorized might be the case last week.
Yeah, and sure, I guess, is what I wrote down.
We then got a video promo from Shinsuke Nakamura calling Seth a liar, deceiver, and manipulator. And Seth came out to do, the same segment he did last week. It was like, look, I agree with everything that Shinsuke is saying there. I've tried to be various different versions of Seth Rollins, and none of those really worked. But the only one that stuck is when you, the audience, told me to be me. So here I am with my wacky sunglasses. Ha 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 ha. And he challenged Nakamura to the world title match now, but instead Nakamura appeared on the screen, beating up Ricochet and said, we'll take your title, but not today. I don't care.
I still like the presentation and the performance of Shinsuke in that video.
Can't argue with that.
Still like the glasses and the coat on Seth. I do not care about Ricochet enough to be bothered when he gets beaten up backstage, and I don't know why Seth should. So it just doesn't work for me. It just feels like they've gone, all right, run it back.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, it was like, Seth quite decisively won at Payback. Yeah. And now they're just feuding some more. But there's no storyline justification for them to feud some more. So they're just, like, I saw someone earlier say that, man, Cody's just in the biggest holding pattern until the Rumble. This world title just feels like it has been in a holding pattern since they got the belt.
It doesn't feel important.
Like, it's like the Finn program just felt like every month it was like, okay, we're just extending this out for various different reasons. But man, it just is a belt that's in a holding pattern waiting for its first big feud.
Yeah.
Speaking of Finn, Jey was walking backstage, getting his steps in. Got to get 10,000. And Finn walked up to him. And I really enjoyed Balor here because Balor was like, "Oi, come here to me." And he said, I really enjoyed what you did in that match where you accidentally super kicked Jey and did this big comical wink.
Yeah.
So good. And he said, like, look, we're all fans of what you're doing. I'm a fan. Dom's a fan. Priest is a fan. Ripley's a fan. And Jey, at the mention of Mammy being a fan, was like, oh, really now?
Yeah, and the crowd laughed. It landed.
Yeah, doors are always open at the Judgment Day. I'm really digging this. My only concern, and I'm just putting this out into the world, my only concern...
Hang on, I'll get my chips.
No, because I'm not going to be pissing on them, because I don't think this is I'm not criticizing it. I'm just putting forward a potential concern. The next few weeks and months are going to be filled with variations of Judgment Day versus Jey, Sammy, and KO.
Yeah, right.
And I've seen variations of Judgment Day versus Sammy, KO plus friend when it was Cody. I don't just want to be stuck watching Raw Pete of Cody being replaced with Jey.
Well, don't worry about that because Cody and Dom are feuding now. Or at least Cody's maybe feuding with JD McDonough. So then you got all four of them at once.
Yeah, I guess so.
War Games!
Anyway, up next, if you're going to watch one thing from this episode, if you didn't watch this episode of Raw, you must go out of your way to watch this.
That's my first note.
Dan has written, I am having a nice time. Nice time being capitalized.
It was wonderful.
I actually was watching this over your shoulder. I was sat in the little like hangout area in the office with the US office on, but I wasn't paying attention to Michael Scott. I was just sort of looking over and rewatching this match with you. What we had here was the Alpha Academy and Tommaso Ciampa versus Imperium in a trios match, and hot dog, this match ruled.
Yeah,
it was great anyway because these six guys are awesome and they just put on this awesome match. It built to two brilliant hot tags with Ciampa and Otis, but the hottest of the hot tags was not the traditional hot tag where someone runs wild. It's when Gunther tagged in and Gable tagged in.
And Gunther beckoned Gable into the ring. He sort of said, tag in.
Tag in.
Come in.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
He's a fighting champion. This is the guy that has given him the best fight since he's won this title. And he just wants to do it again and beat this little man once again and make that kid cry.
You love it.
And it was so, so cool. And then you just get into the final third of this match, which is everyone just does big moves, everyone's hitting each other, and you build to this finish where Giovanni Vinci gets the roll up on Gable, but Gable kicks out of that and he locks in the ankle lock. And Gunther is about to get in the ring, but Gunther's already broken up the ankle lock on Vinci once by just booting Chad Gable. And he's about to like break it up again. Ciampa intercepts Gunther, gets him in the Gargano escape or the Sicilian stretch, and he's locking this in. Gable grabs the leg vine on Vinci and is staring a hole in Gunther and just yelling at him while Gunther is in this submission hold. And Vinci taps out, and it was awesome. Fabulous this was.
It was spectacular. I mean, there was... I want to point out Otis's collision with a post where he basically ran headfirst into it and then just hung down the ropes for a while, which looked amazing. And that's what then led to the stare-off between Gable and Gunther. And I want to do two things. First of all, I want to put over Chad Gable in a massive way again, because
it's what this podcast basically is these days.
Stage, I love the sort of reference to Kurt Angle, which has been there since the beginning. He's an Olympian. Like, you know, I don't know if Jason Jordan was an Olympian. I know he was a proper athlete, but I don't know if he was.
Yeah, he might have done like college wrestling.
Right,
and stuff,
but I don't know if he was. Whereas Gable obviously in the London Olympics. He's started doing the pull the straps down to pull them back up to pull them down again thing. He's recently added the leg vine ankle lock to the which for me is the sign that the match is over, right? I always think Kurt Angle's one of my favorites of all time. What a hot take that is. But he's like there with it in, just yelling tap, tap, and it got even better when he had the mouth guard in. It's that energy that I'm seeing from Chad Gable in this moment when he's locked. He's done 3 or 4 ankle locks already.
Yeah,
in the match.
As a correction on myself, it was the Gunther had broken up the Chaos Theory because he got Vinci over in the Chaos Theory suplex and just came
kicked the kidney,
booted him in the kidneys.
But he's done a few ankle locks in here already. he's got the ankle lock in, waits for Gunther to be trapped, then does the leg vine, stares, intensity, fury. It was exquisite.
Angle-esque, man.
And then I want to pivot now and put over Gunther, because we were talking about, do you put the belt on Gable? Do you put the belt on Gable? La, la, la. The real quality of Gunther is that he made us believe it simply had to be Sheamus. There was no way anyone was taking that title off Gunther except for Sheamus, because Sheamus has never won the belt, because they had that match of the year at Clash. They had a match of the year candidate at Mania this year. Sheamus is the guy, but they're on different brands. We'll get there someday. And now we feel like it has to be Chad Gable. Gunther is an equal opportunity star maker. He makes himself a star and manages to bring his opponents to his level, the ones especially who have it.
He's a perfect wrestler.
He's a perfect wrestler. And I think everyone needs to give him his praise and flowers. The talk about when the title come off him, we had it in the office recently. Keep it on him. My pitch for you is that it stays on there until the end of the year. Chad Gable, perhaps Ciampa is the next competitor. Ciampa can have a go. Gable doesn't have to go away completely, but I personally, now that we have a crying child in the scene, would like to see Gable win the belt at Christmas. You have a lovely Christmas moment, maybe a New Year's moment of he's won the belt, whatever. That frees Gunther up for a little bit of time, because Gunther wins the Royal Rumble for me. My fantasy booking Royal Rumble is Gunther at number 1, Cody Rhodes at number 1, Gunther at number 30, a reverse of last year. The final 3 are Gunther, Cody, and Intercontinental Champion Chad Gable. And it's just this great little 3-way match at the end, and then Gunther wins it. That's what I've got. But
yeah, so I mentioned this in the editor review, but when Chad Gable faced Gunther last week, I don't think there was many of us. We talked about this podcast. I don't think there were many of us that thought that Chad was going to win because the record.
Yes.
That was a match that was done so that Gunther could officially set the record of the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion ever.
It was pushed back specifically for that purpose.
Exactly. It's pushed back for this, so we just have that match, but no one went into that match thinking Chad Gable's going to win.
Sure,
you've got that little bit of Michael Cole magic in there. It's like, well, there's always a chance. Like, yeah, with Sami Zayn in the Elimination Chamber.
Or we had it in the Usos and the New Day. There was a little part of me that was like, are they going to manage that?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's fun to pop that little question mark in there.
But I would say 99% of us were pretty nailed on. Gunther is winning here because Gunther's going to set the record. Let's get the honky tonk man out of the record books. It was a fun joke for a while, but it's been too long. That's now no longer a factor. That is Deborah in the build to WrestleMania X7. Bam, non-factor.
Yeah.
Because the record's set. So the next time these two face each other, I genuinely believe that Chad could win. So when those near falls are happening, I genuinely think Chad might win. And the same thing happened with Sheamus.
Yeah.
I thought Sheamus was nailed on to win the belt last year. I thought he might win the belt at Mania as well. And although I predicted that Gunther was going to win, because I was like, they're going to break the record. I was like, there's every chance that Sheamus could win, though. And like the record actually doesn't mean a jot. Now the record's done. So when you do Gunther versus Gable, probably at Payback, Fastlane rather, there's always that chance.
Yeah, I genuinely think hold it back.
But I think because Gunther's so great at this that I'm like, keep the belt on him. Just because the record's broken, like, doesn't mean you have to take the belt off him now.
I mean, they did it with Asuka at Night of Champions. It was like, and that was the reason I ended up picking her. And my predictions was that Bianca's reign had ended, so there was no reason to keep it on her. So her reign had broken the record. In this case, I do think keep it on him for a while and feed him other people before you feed. And then if you want, you've got Sheamus in line for Gable's first defense if you want to give the belt to Gable.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just incredible.
I would like an apology from all those people that called me out when we had Walter as our number 1 wrestler of the year in 2019, and people were like, "You guys are mad because he's not that impressive." I'd like an apology from every single one of those people
in writing.
But it was awesome. So the other thing to kind of mention there is Tommaso Ciampa.
Oh yes.
Can we all agree that the DIY thing was just him doing a social media thing and a social media thing only? It wasn't actually a creative plan. Like, I know they've been dropping hints and stuff on TV, but Gargano did that after the draft.
Well, do you remember?
And then he said on TV once, "You've got to do it yourself." But then last week it was like, or 2 weeks ago, I was like, I guess he's fine without Gargano. He doesn't need Gargano in his life because he's beating Bronson Reed anyway.
Last week he went to see Adam Pearce.
And they said on this show, what he was told by Adam Pearce is that he's got to seize his opportunities. So he's now going into this program with Gunther, seemingly, to seize his opportunities. That's not a continuation of the DIY thing.
Can I put my tinfoil hat on for a second?
Please go for it.
Guess who's back?
Nia Jax. That's the title of this episode.
No, the other back. Not Raquel's back.
Oh, yeah.
Vince's back. He's back from his back. And there was the whole idea that there was going to be a whole segment, and then Vince put the kibosh on it, and now Vince is back again. Maybe the DIY thing is canned again, but I don't know.
Gargano's been cleared. He was at the India show.
Yeah,
Gargano being squashed by a Moss, and apparently that's just all Gargano is now. Gargano is just someone who is at home. He then gets called up by WWE to be like, "Are you busy this weekend? Can you just come to this house show so Moss can beat you in 3 minutes?"
He's got a kid. He's making money, I guess, but like, it feels like a waste if you're Johnny Gargano,
isn't it? Just.
So,
we want to talk about bringing someone back that felt hot in November and doing sweet FA with them. Crivens. And because of that, where's Dexter Lumis? Like, what are Candice and Indy doing?
It
what
feels
happened to the way?
It feels like a waste of breath to even keep discussing
Maybe.
it. I feel, just because it clearly is not happening.
So, the last thing to talk about here was, I thought, so good it should have been an in-ring segment.
Ooh.
I think this should have been a 7-minute in-ring segment as opposed to a 90-second backstage segment. So it was a contract signing for Tiffany Stratton and Becky Lynch for their NXT Championship match, Women's Championship match that's happening tonight. I thought Becky was so great in this segment. I thought Tiffany was awesome in this segment. And I was like, if you want to try and highlight NXT and try and get people to watch this, because that's what they've been doing. This whole main roster integration is, the thing we've been asking them to do for the past 8 years. They're finally now doing it, is to make people who are watching Raw also tune in to watch NXT the following night. Do this as an in-ring segment. Give Tiffany Stratton this huge rocket onto her to be like, look how cool and great she is. Look how awesome she looks with this belt. How great she delivers these promos. She looks like a star. And she's in the ring holding her own against Becky Lynch. Don't you want to see that title match? I thought this would have been an awesome little in-ring segment. I mean, it was great as a 90-second backstage segment, don't get me wrong. But I thought it was so good, I'd have done this in-ring.
This might surprise you. I'm a fan of brevity. So when it comes to in-ring segments, for me, especially with some of the younger performers, there can be an element of I'll say a line and then look at the crowd. And then I'll come back and say it even bigger and then look at the crowd and then come back. And it loses its teeth for me. This was snappy. It was to the point. There was still the stock acting lesson performance that everyone gets at the Performance Center, which makes them all act the same way, regardless of what words they're given.
We also saw Raquel's promo earlier in the evening.
There you go. From Tiffany.
I am saying words.
But the look she has and the energy she has is so good that I'm like, fair play to you. And then Becky is Becky Lynch, So I thought this was far more effective backstage than if it would have been in ring. Can we talk about what might happen
I was going to
tomorrow
ask you that question.
On NXT?
Tonight, yeah. And then Becky wins the belt?
Well, I think it would be major news for Tiffany Stratton to get the win over Becky Lynch on NXT TV. So I think we consider a Becky Lynch title run on NXT for a number of reasons. A nice little run for her after the Trish feud. She had that Trish feud that went for a while and seems to have been a bit exhausting for her. She gets to stay at home for a while because it's filmed close to where she lives. Rather than traveling all over the country, if she's on the NXT brand, use her to elevate a few stars, use her to build a new star when she wins the belt.
She's never won the belt before.
She's never won the belt before, which, if you want to keep her, she can't be a Grand Slam champion unless she wins that belt. So give her it in this way and keep her busy until January.
Yeah, I could see
and then especially if you want to fast track Tiffany to the main roster.
Yeah,
that's your way,
because you can do the rematch at Fastlane,
sure,
or at Survivor Series or something.
I keep them apart.
Saudi show. Well, so your argument is to give So Becky wins the belt, but then they don't do the Tiffany rematch.
No.
In NXT for a little while.
I say they don't do a rematch. I say Becky wins the belt, and they go, and Becky just is the champ down in NXT for the next couple of months. Like, I don't know. I'm like, do a little run down there.
I don't think it's the worst idea. I actually think putting the belt on Becky Lynch would be pretty awesome.
Yeah,
really.
pretty major.
I think there is an argument to be made. I'm not saying I fully agree with this argument, by the way. I'm just saying that I could see this being an argument made that Dom's already got the North American Championship. So, like, do you want to have another main roster person just winning one of the NXT titles? Like, does that help the NXT brand in any way?
To be clear, in case I'm not being, I don't have Becky on Raw in this period. I only have her on NXT. I commit to the brand split.
I think you need her on Raw, though.
Well, here's the thing.
And also brand split. Judgment Day were on SmackDown this
well,
week.
they've got the
you got the tag belts. Well, Donna hasn't.
Yeah, but they're a faction. They ride together. I personally would be in the same way Charlotte was on NXT. Granted, pandemic, but I think it would be kind of interesting to just have Becky down there working with a lot of the young talent.
It answers the question, why isn't Becky going for the belt?
Right, and that's what I mean. Keep her busy until January. She can maybe lose the belt at a show in January to a young star who's, on the rise or whatever. Put her over, shake her hand. She doesn't lose any shine because she's Becky Lynch. I don't think Raw would be worse off without her. It could always be better off with her, to be clear, but I don't think it's the worst nightmare in the world. I just think it would be an interesting choice to make.
I agree with you with everything apart from taking her off Raw. If only because Raw might be about to lose Cody.
Sure.
If you're losing Cody and you're losing Becky, Seth ain't selling tickets. Absolutely.
They want to sing his song.
Seth ain't selling tickets. That is a byproduct of you buying the ticket.
Yeah.
Like that's an extra.
His song bonus. Is more over than he is.
Like they're genuine. Maybe say like, oh, Brian's not over. The yes chart's over. Like this is actually genuine. I think the song is over and Seth isn't. I think you're losing both Cody and Becky. I think it'd be really bad for Raw. Even with how awesome Gunther and Chad Gable are, I think you need Becky still on Raw. Also, I think it would do wonders for the Women's Championship, much in the same way that it feels like the North American Championship is elevated because it's been featured on Raw and SmackDown and stuff. That's my personal take on it, though. I do think that she's winning the belt, though.
I think it would be, you could do far worse.
But also, like, if Tiffany gets the win, man, that's a great string to her bow.
It really is.
Yeah.
Be Becky Lynch.
But there you go. That was this week's episode of Raw. I gave it 3 out of 5.
I had a lot of fun with it, and I don't... No, I was going to say, I don't know if that's because I was in the office having a little giggle with it. There was a lot here that I liked, so I'm like in the thumbs up category. I thought this was a fun episode.
Yeah. Like, as with all Triple H episodes since he took over, there have been no bad episodes of Monday Night Raw. This was just another fine... wheels are spinning episode of Raw. I really do think that this show is being saved single-handedly by Imperium and Chad Gable, as Alpha Academy as a whole. But I'm enjoying the Jey Uso stuff. I'm liking the Drew stuff.
I like the Drew stuff. I like the Jey stuff. I like the Imperium stuff. Nia Jax isn't a plus or a negative for me.
Chelsea
I liked
Green's fun backstage with Adam Pearce.
There you go.
But yeah, it's a totally fine episode of Raw. Thank you all so much for watching. We're going to shout out some of our awesome Patreons over at patreon.com/WrestleTalk. Tomorrow on WrestleTalk, it is Behind the Scenes with Dan Later making his debut on the show, talking about your friend Mark Markson.
Oh, yeah.
And how Mark got involved with WrestleTalk.
On the timeline.
Yeah, exactly. And, we would talk about our all-in weekends, hanging out with Denise and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, that's going to be... and some teasers of future projects that we've got coming up as well. So, bit of spice. So, go and check that out over at Patreon tomorrow. Next week will be After Dark. And then the week after that will be myself plus guest reviewing ECW Barely Legal 1997. Where, spoilers, Terry Funk wins the ECW title. But if you're one of our $25 and above Patreon Pledgehammers, you get your name read out on this show, like these fine folk. Max, Kurt Wallander, Wallen.
Michael, Mark for Life, Plowman.
This is some kind of Patreon shout-out. Nate drop surname.
The intriguing infrared, Nia Alfredo Vile.
Parking lot brawl champion, Parker King.
Peter Fiber Brantois.
Probably better than Kyle, Philip O'Reilly.
The man who wears the gold, the man recognized by SWAF Nation International as the 24/7 champion, our legend.
Raw Brands Ambassador, Redmond 2490.
Reese Cook, what the Rock is smelling.
Mr. Moneybags, Rich Holt.
And Burly Rob Burwell.
That is your Hall of Fame class for the 12th of September 2023. Right, let's get into the rest of your Alpha Chats. And Matt is going to kick us off here with, bear with me on this one from Matt. There's a lot that Matt would like to get off their chest. To see all the good that Trips has done for the company be undone by Vince, it would suck for Hunter, the talent, and the fans. That's the worst case scenario. However, there is light at the end of the tunnel. SRS and Jimmy Van were asked on The Hump, which is a show they do over on their Patreon, if there's any chance of Vince being removed from power. And they said there's a very high possibility that it happens because Vince is under federal investigation for 4 days after they raided his house. He got spinal surgery, and the federal government don't raid someone's house unless they are confident that the person they raided had committed a crime. If they do press charges on VKM, he would likely either be removed from the company completely or voted out by Endeavor, or would be on indefinite leave. And if he was found guilty, he'd be removed from the position. Get this, there were 72,000 cases last year where the federal government pressed charges after completion of their investigation. Only 1% of the defendants that they were taken to court were found innocent. So if they do press charges on Vince, he's likely done. The other way Vince could be removed is after the deal officially goes through. A lot of information that was private about him will become public, which in turn could lead to more allegations and been leaked to the Wall Street Journal, which SRS has said is a real possibility of happening, as those NDAs will expire this month. When Wall Street Journals came out last year, he was advised by the board and legal teams to retire, and it was his call and his decision. This time, it's not his call. Endeavor aren't going to want that bad publicity associated with the brand, and legally, in either of those two scenarios, would be able to remove him from power. I'm rooting for one of those two things to happen. SRS put it best that Triple H's Raw is absolutely the right. Triple H is absolutely the best person to lead WWE right now. He took over last year and made a cold product red hot and exciting for the first time in years. It was under his leadership that ratings went up and they were having record gates. Vince saw this and got jealous and forced his way back in. I hope things work out and Vince gets removed for good and Hunter can have full control and power. His vision for WWE is exciting. I want to see it realized. Just need to remove the 78-year-old anchor that is holding this company back. Just to clarify as well, that even if he does get removed, Triple H still isn't in charge of the company. It's just there'll be no Vince there.
Head of
he'll always be head of creative.
I think I don't know. I when people say something like "I'm not a insert job here," like I'm not a lawyer, or I'm not an expert on like UK or whatever, but nothing after that but really matters. So I'm very aware of what I'm saying here, which is I'm not an expert on business, but I think there's something about the stakeholders in the new TKO. There are more WWE than there are.
I think it's an even split.
Is it even
Actually, I think there's more on the Endeavor side than on the WWE side, if I remember correctly.
Literally, my only knowledge of business is I watch Succession, so like I'm The Apprentice, so I can't really provide any insight on how they work. But it's one of those things where it's like we can speculate all we want, but we don't really know.
We will never know. Like,
so
there could be more Wall Street Journal articles, because that is something that Sean has talked about on Fightful. There could be more allegations that come out against him. But there've been allegations against Vince, we mentioned earlier in the show, for 40-odd years. The Rita Charlton case is nothing new. Like, that's always been against him. But even when the Wall Street Journal articles came out, it didn't hurt business. Like, it didn't. So if you're Endeavor, you've got to look at Matt's there being like, oh, they won't want the bad publicity. They probably wouldn't care. It just depends on the strength of it, and what traction that it gets might be what pushed them into one direction or another.
Yeah, and ultimately it's Triple H's in the creative role, and as you said earlier in the show, he's like doing a good,
absolutely, yeah,
a good job.
That's why he's still got that position,
and it's measurable on a number of things. So
we don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Let's see how it plays out.
Bailey Reichardt is. I really love how WWE is having Jey Uso earn trust and respect back. Feels like if he turned face 3 years ago, people immediately would have forgiven him and acted like he did no wrong. That's the strength of characters like Kevin Owens.
Yeah.
And Drew, actually, in fairness. Kuzu here. So Jey had a couple of months head start over Jimmy in the character development, and now the latter has to play catch up.
I think he had a couple of years, though. I think the thing is they were all a part of the story together, and Jey obviously was the first one to stand up to Roman, and then it's been 3 years worth. And then, especially over the last year or so, the Jey and Sammy relationship has been far more front and center than the Jimmy and Sammy relationship. Jimmy is a player in the game. Jimmy's like a guest actor in a TV show, whereas featured actor as what Jey Uso is to me.
Yeah, I get that, but Jimmy was the first to turn.
Right.
Like, Jimmy turned on Roman before Jey did.
Yeah.
So if you're going, like, surely from that you'd be like, oh, that's our launching point for Jimmy then. Like let's do some character work for Jimmy. You know, the argument that Kuzu was making there is like, well, Jey had a head start over Jimmy. It's like, well, why don't you've had time to give Jimmy some character work, but the work you've given Jimmy is just like, hey, he's back in the bloodline now.
Yeah.
Everyone's back in the bloodline.
Oh, I mean even way further back than even those things. I'm talking like the people are invested in Jey because they were invested in Sammy. Like, whereas at that time they weren't invested in Jimmy yet. So if you're expecting Jimmy to be as over as Jey now, he's just not going to be because he's not been that level of the character.
But I think it's less. Yeah, character is a major part of this, but it's story. Like, if you are really invested in this bloodline story, and you were so into Jimmy turning on the bloodline and convincing Jey that he should also leave the bloodline, why would you be interested in seeing Jimmy just want to go back to the bloodline 3 months later?
Yeah. I mean, I get
that's not character. That is that's bad storytelling.
Well, I get, but I think we're talking about two different things because I don't disagree with you. I'm talking about because they're saying Jey got a head start in character development. You're talking about what's happening now. I'm talking about the reason Jey is so over is because of everything that already happened, during which time Jimmy wasn't a main player. So now he's like trying to be pushed up to main player status, and I think there's an expectation level that he can. And the expectation that he can be there when he hasn't had that development, and then they're giving him the bad stuff. It's not working because he's not on. If they gave Jey that bad stuff, it probably wouldn't work as well either.
Yeah.
But it would take longer for it to feel as dry as Jimmy feels now.
But yeah,
whereas Jimmy hasn't been part of it.
You sort of just look at that and it's like, well, why weren't you doing stuff with Jimmy then?
No,
like, why aren't you doing character development
I agree.
with Jimmy?
I do agree.
Her Business 2 here says, maybe I'm from an era where character mattered more than in-ring work, but I think Chelsea Green would be hilarious as a champion in the future. The vignette possibilities are endless.
Her work is good.
Her in-ring work's great as well. And also, like, it's, those things are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
Richard Martinez said, fading to black for the 3 count seems like standard production to me. Can't give away the money shot for free, Dan.
I don't understand what you're talking about. That's a reference that doesn't fly in my good Christian wrestling.
Irami here said, I hope that Gunther gets to keep the title a little longer. Something I'd really like to see to establish just how dominant he is would be either a 2 out of 3 falls or an Iron Man match where he sweeps his opponent. It's something that doesn't happen often.
An Iron Man match where he sweeps his opponent is a boring match. If it's like, I'm just going to rack up win after win after win after win for the final 5 minutes, it's like, oh, skip to the end. It's like that's a tricky thing to book. But I mean, I'd love to see an Iron Man match that goes both ways.
Kuzu said, I didn't believe it at first, but Cody right now really is on a 2012 John Cena run. Lost his WrestleMania match and had nothing to do all year until he faced The Rock again at Mania 29 and won. History truly repeats. Well, Kuzu, what you forget there is that in that promo package for WrestleMania 29, John Cena talked about how that was the worst year of his life. Beating Brock Lesnar and being the main event of loads of pay-per-views and always being featured on TV. Oh, that was the worst year of his life that man had.
It's just a little bit of history repeating.
And shout out to Reggie Marshall for becoming a member. And I think that might be. That was very good. I think that might be it.
That's us.
Well, thank you all so much for watching. Back on Thursday with the AEW Dynamite review, the finals of the Grand Slam tournament. It's Roddy versus Joe, which I'm very, very excited about, and a fatal 4-way for the Afterthought Women's Division. So tune in on Thursday to hear us review AEW Dynamite, and then, I mean, like, hey, there's no pay-per-views coming up for a little while.
Oh my God, what weekend!
I know, we haven't got a pay-per-view until
7th of October.
WrestleDream.
Oh, 1st of October, and then 7th of October. So they're back now. 2
pay-per-views in October again.
Yeah.
And then there's 3 in November.
You got Night of Champions, you got Survivor Series, and Full Gear.
Yeah, there's 3 weekends in November, and there's 4 weekends in November, and 3 of them have got pay-per-views. Yeah. And then, but there's none in December.
Oh, great.
Yet.
Yeah. There's still time. They love it.
So thank you all so much for joining us. However, we are going to end this poll and see what you thought of, this episode of Monday Night Raw. And what did you think of it? You thought that this was a mid-show by the looks of this. Oh. Thumbs down 12%, thumbs up 36%, mid 51%.
Oh, that's a lot harsher than I expected.
It's pointing slightly upwards, but
it's like,
you're right. Like that feels more firmly in the middle than it has done in previous weeks. I think I don't want to say the bloom is coming off the rose. I think the honeymoon period for Triple H booking has been over for quite some time now. But I think the bloom is coming off the rose on Raw in particular, because I think since SummerSlam, it being the same show every single week, then them doing a pay-per-view, and then them doing mostly the same feuds again, has left people being like, oh, maybe this isn't a good show.
Yeah, interesting. That's a good thought.
Or it is a mid show, I should say. It is a good show. It's a mid show.
A mid show.
Anyway, we'll be back on Thursday with another episode of the WrestleTalk Podcast. I've been Luke Owen, DAD. That has been the Professor Dan Layton, the truth Dan Layton. Please do press the subscribe button if you're first time here and you made it this far. Give us a thumbs up, and if you're watching this on demand, leave a comment down below. See you soon, guys. Jam that jam.